Welcome to the month from Friends You Can Trust. Every week we broadcast a new review of a film, talk about some film news, and recommend what to watch. We've been talking, critiquing, and gushing over movies from since we were in high school, and we aim to bring you honest conversation on relevant cinema. How's it going, Nick?
Hey yo, it's going all right. It's going pretty good. Just excited to talk about the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I've been waiting a long time for this one.
Yeah, dude. I'm just sitting here. You just off air told me that you're going to SummerSlam in a couple
Mm-hmm.
weeks with Christina, your wife, and I am so jealous.
Yeah.
You're gonna see the star of the Suicide Squad in person.
Oh yeah. What if he comes out in Peacemaker costume?
Oh God. Well, I mean, honestly, I think that John Cena, the wrestler, has more power in the ring than the Peacemaker. But the
Yeah,
Peacemaker is more wild card. He might actually kill somebody.
it's true. Yeah, I'm really excited. It'll be cool to see John Cena in person. I mean,
Oh,
you don't
dude,
get to.
yeah.
It's
He's
exciting.
barely
Yeah,
around anymore, but man, I mark out so hard these days whenever he comes back.
yeah, yeah. Now he's a star, and they have a Peacemaker TV show coming out too on HBO.
Really?
Yeah, which is
I
also
didn't know
written and
that.
directed by James Gunn.
What?
Yeah, you didn't know about this?
I had no idea.
Yeah, they already filmed it. I think it's or no, they're filming it. I guess still 8 episodes. No release date yet, but
Wow, interesting.
yeah,
Full anti-hero on that one. That should be
yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah. But
Well, that
yes.
that changes something I was going to say later. So we let's get
Oh,
into
okay.
it and we can talk about it later, but
Okay.
very cool. That's very exciting.
Yeah. So James Gunn, for those that don't know, was the director of the Suicide Squad, and he's been someone that we've been following for a while. He's really kind of came to fame when he made the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He's kind of has this knack for taking these really obscure characters and making them these lovable, uh, name brands, pretty much. So it was really exciting to see him um, be trying out a whole different universe of characters, making a DC movie instead of a Marvel movie. But let's dig back a little bit and just kind of introduce people to James Gunn for those who don't know who he is. He's been
Hella.
around. Hello, is that what you said?
No, no, I said hella. Let's do
Oh,
it.
okay.
Sorry.
So he's been around for a little while, but he started out in Trauma, which is kind of known for its you call them like schlocky B movies. They're kind of like intentionally offensive and macabre and just like lots of violence and gore and stuff like that.
That's like the Toxic Avenger, right? That
Yeah,
kind of thing.
that's their biggest movie, I think, Toxic Avenger. And he started out as a writer for them. As I'm looking through, he's got a handful of movies. He wrote like Terror Firmer, which is pretty was like their second big movie I know. Tromeo and Juliet, and 13 Ghosts. I didn't know he wrote 13 Ghosts. That's not a Troma
Yeah.
movie, but um, and then he broke out into Hollywood and he wrote the Scooby Doo movies, as well as Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, which is
Oh.
I think that was probably my introduction. It was the first time I'd seen anything he'd done. Um,
Yeah, me too. I actually to this day this is all news to me. I did not know that he wrote that movie.
oh really?
So that
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's interesting.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That was like his big, yeah, the big kind of intro. But then he finally got into directing movies with Slither. It's kind of a B horror alien invasion movie, with kind of a zombie twist on like aliens. It's right at, like it fits in for like establishing his brand. It's like a super gory, like gross horror movie, but it's also a comedy. Like it's pretty lighthearted, and nothing's supposed to be like too, heavy. It's a gross alien monster movie, and like emphasis on the gross. They try to make it as gross as possible. It's part of the fun of that kind of brand of movie. Did you ever see
Kind of the
Slither?
I have not seen
Oh,
Slither, but
okay.
that's kind of the trauma thing too, right? Like trauma is kind of one on one with body horror. There's
Yeah.
just a lot of gross stuff that comes out of fallen limbs and blood and guts and
Yeah.
chemicals and bubbly. And I see that I got the poster for Slither right here, and it's like there's a bathtub, there's a girl's leg in the tub,
Yeah.
and then there's these slug-like. You ever read Animorphs, Yerks? Remember those?
I
I feel
did
like
never get
little Yerks are like crawling into the tub, and I can just imagine all sorts of body horror coming out of that.
Yeah. And
I I
go ahead.
I'd love to see Slither. I just
Yeah.
haven't had a chance.
It's really good. It stars Nathan Fillion. Pam Beasley's in it. Jenna Fisher. Oh, she was married to James Gunn, I think, for a while. And
Oh,
yeah, and it's a silly movie. I think there's like a talking deer. There's a bunch of crazy stuff in it, but it's a fun. And Michael Rooker plays the bad guy, of course. He's in all of James Gunn's movie. And then he followed up with Super. Did you see Super?
I did see Super. I did.
Starring,
It's like a more violent version of Kick-Ass.
yeah, it's like
But
it's a weirdly more grounded version of Kick-Ass, I guess, but like
yeah,
in a much darker like concept, I
yeah.
think.
I don't think I was super into either movie. I mean, you know me. I'm
Yeah.
not super into Kick-Ass. And I think I might have liked Super a little bit more because my main hangups for Kick-Ass were how it was too colorful for how violent it was,
Right.
and Super kind of grounded the style and made it more violent, which kind of
Right.
made sense considering it was like a vigilante superhero that was just kind of over his head.
Yeah.
But
I think Super works really well too because like everybody's really fucked up in that movie. Just like everyone across the board. There's no one in there that's like just a regular guy that's turning super violent. It's like even the people that are even the heroes are like really fucked up. Um, and yeah, it works. I like it. That was kind of his second big movie. So these were both like two hard R movies, and then somehow he got the job writing Guardians of the Galaxy with Disney, and then landed the directing job. And ever since then, I think he's been a pretty high profile director, just because that movie, really blew the doors off of August releases at the time. I remember it like set the records for biggest August release, and then also it's just like these characters that no one knew about, and
yeah.
being able to like sell them that well and really nail it too. Like the movie's great.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy was a big deal. It
Yeah.
really was. It was the highest grossing movie of that summer in 2014. And at the time, no one had any idea who the Guardians of the Galaxy were. And a lot of people were talking like this might be Marvel's first misstep.
All right.
Because, what, you're going to make a movie with a talking raccoon?
And
What
like
is this crap?
schlubby Chris Pratt, like who? And then
Right,
like,
the
oh,
guy from Parks and Rec, that guy?
yeah.
But then I think on the flip side, they bet big and it paid off. I think that in a lot of ways, Guardians of the Galaxy was the movie that sold the MCU to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, maybe you were into the Avengers, but this was early in Phase 2. This was right around when Winter Soldier was coming out. That was another one that I think a lot of film buffs were kind of brought into the MCU, like
Yeah.
big time, like became fans. But Guardians, I think, was the movie that was so fun. It had that awesome pop soundtrack. The cast of characters was weird. It was different. It wasn't just your regular comic book movie, and it kind of opened the doors for a lot of new original content and creativity, and just kind of that impressive nature that the MCU is.
Yeah, and I think
Or
you're
can be.
right. Like it kind of showed everybody that like Marvel has a really deep like cast of characters that they can pull from a deep well, and like any of them can make a great movie with the right people behind it. So I think that definitely sold people on like taking chances on like now we got like Shang-Chi and the Eternals and stuff, not like big popular comics, but they'll probably do pretty good, and they might be decent movies too. So and then he did Guardians 2, which was also a big hit. A little bit not quite as well received. I think it was more of a. I think he probably got a little more freedom on it, and it felt like more of a character, like kind of deep dive on these interpersonal relationships that all these characters have, as opposed to this big globe-trotting adventure movie. Um, which I really like that movie. I'm a big fan of it. Um, then he had the incident with Disney, which was
Right.
some old tweets that, to his credit, were actually brought up when he first got hired by Disney, but it was a different time in 2014 than it was in 2018 or whatever.
Right. If we
And
think about the timeline on this, like he tweeted out some, Twitter's been around since 2006 or so,
yeah,
but uh, he tweeted a bunch of stuff in the early 2010s, like 2010, 2011, 2012, and he didn't get the Disney job until what, like 2012 or 2013, right?
yeah,
And I'm sure at that point he was, he's going corporate, he's got to put on his, collar shirt and his tie.
yep,
I'm sure he's at that point he's not tweeting as much crazy stuff, but I mean honestly the tweets are pretty bad. I before we got on the air I was like, well maybe we should read some of them. And I like Googled it and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not reading any of these on
yeah,
air. But also, it is kind of that thing of comedy changes over time, and he was kind of part of that trauma crew, like you said, who is all about shock value and shock humor. And you know it kind of feels like the incident was handled in a unjust sort of way,
mm-hmm.
uh, disingenuous. Like there were people that were kind of going after him because of his woke agenda. Am I wrong about this? Like
Yeah. That's
he kind of like had a woke agenda, and then people were like, "Yeah, well, look at all this bad stuff you said 10 years ago,"
yeah,
and it kind of stirred up a lot of stuff, and then Disney kind of just fired him from
like immediately.
GOTG.
It was like the
Yeah.
day they brought it up. They're like, okay, he's gone right away.
We don't
But
want any trouble. We don't
yeah,
want any trouble.
yeah. And then I think it was only like a month later, Warner Brothers signed him to write and direct the Suicide Squad, and it kind of.
Wait,
Wait, go ahead.
no, I was just say, which is also like super interesting too, because like that's a direct rival.
Yeah,
It'd be. I mean, we were talking wrestling before. It's kind of like this WWE AEW thing, where it's like, oh well, we're gonna fire you for something stupid. Well, AEW's like, well, we got him now.
yeah,
We got the guy now,
yeah.
and it's. I mean, I'll be honest. Like the first Suicide Squad, the one that came out in what year was that? 2015.
Yeah, 2016, I think.
2016. That was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Like
It's really
I thought
bad.
that movie was a train wreck. It just didn't make any sense. It was barely a movie. And I would have no interest in a Suicide Squad movie if almost anyone other than James Gunn was directing it. Like
Mm-hmm.
right when he got signed, it was like, okay, actually I'm interested in this movie now. But literally anyone else, I'd be skeptical.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's not like David Ayer's a terrible director, you know. Um, but that's the kind of movie that came out of that system at the time. So, but it seems like it's all been kind of patched up because then about a year later after that, Disney hired him back on to do Guardians 3, and he's doing like a Guardians holiday special or something like that. But it is kind of a big deal though in the future course of the MCU, because I don't know if you remember, but at the time, Guardians 3 was still going to be his last movie with Disney, and he was going to be in like help. He was kind of be going to be the Kevin Feige for the next Marvel phase. Like he was helping do what they're at the time. I think they've probably changed now, like their ideas, but it was going to be they were talking about the MCU, like a galactic or something. I can't. They had a nickname for it at the time, and it was expanding outwards away from Earth and getting into all the um, bigger concept stories and stuff like that. And he was going to be kind of shepherding a lot of that in.
Yeah, I know very, very little about any sort of backstage development with
Yeah,
Marvel or any studio, basically. Like I read basically the headlines when they come out of Hollywood Reporter. Jeff Snyder being like, "Hey, look at this movie's being made," and I'm like, "Thanks, Jeff," but I'm not super in on the rumor mill or possible behind the scenes storytelling, but it
right.
does seem like they're going a different direction. If that is the direction they were going to go in with Galactus and outer space, I'm sure they still are going to keep going out there. I mean, Thor's and the rest of the Guardians are going out there, but It certainly seems like nowadays they're more focused on. It seems like they're more towards interdimensional type stuff and maybe the secret wars or something. But
Yeah.
again, I don't know much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll find out later this year as all these movies come piling out. We'll see what kind of
Right.
direction
Yeah,
they're going
and
to take with them. But,
it's also just interesting too with James Gunn though too. Like, yeah, who's he loyal to? Right?
right.
Is he going to make the Suicide Squad 2, or is he going to make Guardians Volume 4, or is he going to make another horror movie? Like, what's next for James Gunn after Guardians?
Yeah. I mean, from what I pay attention to his career pretty closely just because I really like him. And from what I've read, Guardians 3 is going to be his last like Guardians movie, and he doesn't have any scheduled movies to make with Disney after that. But Warner Brothers kind of gave him like open, like if you want to make anything else in DC, feel free. And I know he said he's not interested in like indie movies anymore. Like he's a big budget kind of guy. He wants to do blockbusters pretty much exclusively. So my bet would be he's gonna make a something in the DC universe, whether it's like a Superman reboot or something. But
Maybe I could see him doing an original concept though. Don't
yeah,
you think? Like, I could
if he
totally
could do
see
like, I
him.
could see him doing a big budget original concept.
That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah,
feel like he could be one of these guys who's like, I got a weird idea. Who's gonna give me 60 million for it or something,
yeah,
and do like, I don't know. I could see him bridging the gap of the big budget and the medium budget to something super creative that could make money back.
yeah,
But
for sure. Well,
we'll see.
I say we jump right into our review now that we've kind of given a history of James Gunn. Um, so the movie we're talking about today is his new film, The Suicide Squad. He wrote and directed it. It stars Idris Elba, Margot Robbie, John Cena, Viola Davis, a newcomer that doesn't look like she's in many movies, but I thought she was really great in this. Daniela Melchior. Um, so
Who
that
did she play again?
she played Ratcatcher too.
Oh, great. Yeah,
Yeah.
she was really good.
Plot description is a group of villains locked up at Belle Reve are forced to invade a hostile South American nation in order to put a stop to a dangerous secret scientific experiment known only as Project Starfish.
You forgot about Jai Courtney and
Pete
Pete
Davidson
Davidson and stuff.
and Flula Borg and
Yeah,
yeah,
just kidding. They were part of the other Suicide Squad.
yeah.
Go on.
And the film's available on HBO Max and in theaters right now. So either way, my take on the movie was that the first, like you said, the first one was such a disappointment. Like I regularly go to it as like one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's a fascinating movie that you could watch and like study and like discover new ways of like making poor decisions in storytelling. Um, so ever since this movie was kind of announced with James Gunn at the helm, it was like that sounds so fascinating because that movie looked like it was going to be so good. It just wasn't. Um, so yeah, I was just like so interested in how this movie was gonna pull off this story again, but in a new, fresh way. And I think they did it very successfully. I had a blast. The cast is so good. Like I every time I see in a movie that is stars Idris Elba, which does not happen enough, because he is so mesmerizing. He's like one of the best leading men. I feel like he's so charismatic and like just constantly like this movie to me feels like it's a very different kind of movie for him to play. Um, although I guess he did
Absolutely. I mean,
do
he's kind of a scoundrel in this movie. You know,
yeah
he's kind of like a swashbuckling, like, ragged, weirdo. Where I feel like most of the time, because I agree, he's a great actor and he
yeah
certainly feels like he can carry a movie. But usually it's with gravitas
yeah
and elegance. And this movie, he's kind of like a reluctant hero. Like, I don't even want to be here.
yeah
Kind of thing.
exactly. That's exactly it. And the whole cast is really good. Margot Robbie again is amazing as Harley Quinn. John Cena, I think this is probably his best performance that I've seen. Viola Davis, brings back the same role of Amanda Waller, who's just like a terrifying human. And I mean, Viola Davis is like, she can be intense. So
Yeah.
they all had really good moments throughout the film that I think really sold their characters, and there was actually depth to them. They weren't just completely throwaway like everybody in the original movie. Um, and that goes a long way, I think, like with the viewer, especially with me. It's like, if you can do that with the characters, I'm gonna be way more invested when the third act comes around, you know. And I thought the violence was really fun in this movie. It kind of harkened back to some of his older stuff. It was, you know, they kind of seemed like there was free reign on, you know, just go all out. Except for one scene we can talk about later. I think there's kind of like a Kill Bill situation going on where they might have had to tone down the blood for rating reasons. But we'll talk about that a little bit. But it was fun. It was gory. It was like over the top and just like a silly mess of blood splatter pretty consistently throughout the whole movie. And I just like all of his movies, I think, kind of have this. He's got a really good grip on shooting action and gore. Like, he has a way of making it fun and not like grotesque, you know. Even if it is really grotesque, it feels fun. It feels like slick and like exciting, and not too much, which I feel like it's
Right.
very easy for it to be too much when you're doing gore and exploding heads and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, there's a scene early on where the boomerang like cuts a guy's head in half, and you can see the brains, but
Yeah.
just for 1 second. But it's in the middle of like a pop song and
Yeah.
other like fun, slick, explosions going around it, and yeah, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
brains.
Yeah. Um but yeah, I want to give you a chance to kind of say what you think about it. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I think the we'll dive a little deeper. But the third act for me, like, really hammered this movie home, and I thought, yeah, I was really, really pleased with the whole thing. So,
Yeah, dude, I like this movie a lot. I definitely enjoyed it tremendously. I had a lot of fun with it, and yeah, I mean, I cared about all the characters. I second everything you said about the actors. Margot Robbie feels like she was born to play Harley Quinn, and in my opinion, this is the first good movie where she is Harley Quinn. I didn't care for Birds of Prey, and like I said earlier, the first Suicide Squad was garbage on fire.
mm-hmm.
But she was good in both those movies, though.
Yeah.
Like, she was the shining light of both of those mediocre movies. And this movie was actually really good. There's a scene where she kind of falls in love with someone, and then she kind of turns on him really quick because he starts acting like a crazy person, and she goes on this monologue and is like kind of crying with it. And what she's saying is very like honest for her character and kind
Yeah.
of silly. Can I just read it really quick? I
Yeah.
have it
Yeah.
right here.
No, please do.
So
It's great.
she goes, "Recently, I made a promise to myself that the next time I got a boyfriend, I'd be on the lookout for red flags. And if I saw any, I would do the healthy thing and I would murder him. And killing kids, kind of a red flag. It's just like it's so good.
Yeah, it's great.
So good. And again, John Cena. Like I love John Cena. If you had told me 10 years ago how hot I would be for John Cena, I would call you crazy. But I am a mark beyond marks right now for the Doctor of Thugonomics. Like, that guy can do no wrong in my book right now. He is just on fire. And honestly, his film career is turning into something interesting. Like, I think at the end of the day, he could have like a more interesting film career than The Rock. I think he already is on his way, having a more interesting one than The Rock. Like, The Rock's a bigger star, but John Cena has layers of depth and the comedy chops, and he allows himself to be the butt of jokes, more so than The Rock ever does. Although Batista, also from Guardians, another James Gunn movie, I think Batista has the potential to be like, I think out of the three of them, he has the highest potential to actually like win an Academy Award,
Oh yeah.
just because he chooses movies that are quality movies.
Mm-hmm.
But he as well is like he's fantastic. He's part of the Suicide Squad, and they're all bad guys, right? Like they're all criminals.
Yeah.
And the movie starts, and I'm going, okay, so what's his deal? He seems like he's just a straight up American. Is he really a bad guy? Like, is he actually like working for the government? Like, I mean, they're all working for the government, but is he really a criminal? And then he says this thing, which I think is actually in the trailer, but he goes, I love peace with all my heart,
Mm-hmm.
and I will kill as many men, women, and children I can to achieve it. And
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, hell yeah, this guy's a bad guy, and he's a full on psychopath, and
Yeah.
I love it. I'm here for it. Yeah. So I thought the characters were great. I cared about all of them, including Polka Dot Man.
Oh yeah.
Just what is with going on with Polka Dot Man? That's just what I kept asking. Then they tell you what's going on with Polka Dot Man, and it's actually pretty sad, but also like
He's
interesting
nuts.
and hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, he shoots polka dots. That's his power. It's
Throws
fantastic.
polka dots at people.
Yeah, it's amazing. But
He has a
um,
line where he's like, "Sorry, it's so flamboyant."
yeah. Oh God.
That's funny.
Yeah, and he's like depressed. Like there's a this part where Idris Elba's Bloodsport says, "We're all gonna die," and he's like, "I hope so." Just
Yeah.
he's such a weirdo, but I love it. And so yeah, I cared about all the characters. I love the action. I love the gore. I love the comedy. I thought it was a little long. Like I definitely thought there were parts where it dragged and.
Yeah.
There's no reason for this movie to be 2 hours and 20 minutes long. I know that's like an easy complaint, and I don't really like to complain about pacing and stuff, but I definitely think they could have trimmed up like whole scenes.
Yeah.
Like they could have just taken full bits out, and the movie would have been quicker, and it would have bumped it up like a full star for me.
Yeah.
At this point, I'd give it like 4 stars because I truly did enjoy it, like quite a bit. Yeah, I thought it was great though.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you about 4 stars. I kept going between 4 and 4.5 because I think I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought it was a good movie, if that makes sense. Like it was everything I was hoping it would be. But if I critique it, I have to lower stars because I definitely have issues with it. But it's just a really fun movie and exactly the kind of thing that I want from this kind of superhero movie. Like if it's a movie about bad guys, it's a superhero movie, and it's gonna be really violent. Like this is exactly what I want from that. It's
Yeah,
just not a perfect movie, but
right. And I agree. And you know me, like I don't really care about perfect movies. I don't really
yeah,
have an image in my head of what an objectively good movie is. I don't really care about any of that. I just, in terms of recommending it to people, I had that, like I talked to a friend a few days ago about, he was trying to go to the movies and he was asking about this one. And I basically told him what I just told you guys, like the characters were great. The action was fun. It was a hilarious movie. It definitely had some issues and it bogged down a little bit, but
yeah,
for the most part, it's a positive. And
yeah,
for me as a big movie fan and also a comic book movie fan, this is what I want. I want more of this kind of thing. Even if they're long or whatever, I prefer interesting characters. I prefer lovable weirdos. I like doing things different. I like the R-rated stuff. I just want things to be different. I'm not super into the cookie cutter,
yeah.
So this movie definitely had some ideas, and it was going for it. And I love it when movies go for it. That's all I really
Just go
want out of
for it.
movies is for them to go for it.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I think me and you have, like, as far as grading movies in whatever capacity that is, I feel like we're kind of in the same boat. Like, for me, it's a lot more about their intention and their heart, and like as
Yeah.
opposed to the actual result that comes out the other side. Is there other stuff you want to talk about that isn't spoilery? I feel like this movie has a lot of spoilers. that
There
kind of
is,
sprinkle
yeah. I
throughout
mean,
the
I want to
thing,
talk about the
so.
opening scene, but that's kind of a spoiler.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about I already talked about Polka Dot Man, so I know, like, we can go into spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really easy movie for anyone to pick up and watch. If you don't have HBO, do a 7-day trial. Just watch it for free right now. But we're going to talk about spoilers going forward. So if you don't want to be spoiled, go watch it for free. Everyone can do it. And then come back. All right. Well, I guess where do you want to start? Just at the opening scene?
Yeah, dude, let's talk about that ballsy opening
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah, so it's kind of a I don't know, there's probably a literary like term for what that is. It's not like a red herring, right? It's just kind of like a little, they kind of open it up. The movie opens up and they introduce the Suicide Squad and the team goes in and then they all get brutally murdered immediately. Like this giant cast of pretty famous people. I feel like most of the cast is like recognizable, you know. And they just all get obliterated in like this just like explosion heavy opening
famous
5 minutes or
famous
whatever.
people too. You know, it's
Yeah,
like the movie starts and I'm like, oh, I didn't know Pete Davidson was in this movie.
yeah,
Oh, and Jai Courtney's back. I didn't really truly realize Jai Courtney was back
yeah.
because he was in the first movie as Boomerang. And then
Nathan
yeah, they go on this
Fillion.
mission.
Yeah,
Right, Nathan Fillion's there. There's also like this weasel as a character, and they all
yeah.
jump out of the airplane, and the weasel can't swim, and he just drowns right there. And Amanda Waller's back at her base, like, God damn it! But oh man, and then yeah, they just go. The army's there, and they just get obliterated. Everyone just dies, except for Harley Quinn. She gets away, but it's like, it's 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 nuts.
Yeah.
And then they do that fun like thing where it's like it basically cuts and they do this funny transition and then they're on the other side of the island with the real
The real
team.
team is coming in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the A team.
yeah, yeah. That opening, it was pretty cool and pretty funny. I will say, like when I'm looking at the movie as a whole, something about the opening didn't fully work for me. I don't know if it's just the way they did it, or maybe it's how much time. Maybe it's like part of the time thing, how much time it takes up to not really, doesn't really like progress the story or anything. You know, it's just kind of a fun thing, which is great. Like it's, I don't know, it's just one of those things that just doesn't really add much to the movie except for just some laughs. You know, there's no story reason for it. I mean, there is kind of, but you can easily get around that. And
I mean, it sets the tone. I think that's what you could say is that it sets
yeah,
the tone for the movie. That it's funny, it's violent,
yeah,
and anything could happen. You know, like
yeah.
it's kind of it's shocking that all these characters and famous people
Yeah,
are just brutally killed. So, you know, when Jai Courtney gets killed, it's like, okay, this is not 2016 Suicide Squad. This is the Suicide Squad.
yeah. No, no, you're right. And it is a good scene. Like I got the song like just started playing in my head as I'm like rethinking it. 'Cause it's got kind of like a yeah poppy like punk rock song playing. So everyone's getting brutally murdered. Um, yeah, I don't. There's something about I don't know if it's maybe it's the jumping back and forth because they also in the middle of this they also jump back in time. They reintroduce the characters, which and it's all great. It's just one of those things where it's like everything I'm seeing is good. I like it all, but yeah, I think at times it kind of messes up the pacing of like the excitement of that opening and then cutting back to the jail and then back to the beach again and then you know it's just kind of it kind of goes it just the way it plays out I think in the first half just kind of feels weird to me when I'm really thinking back on it. And I went and so I watched it in theaters. I saw it at the Dolby Atmos, which by the way is the loudest movie I've ever seen. Like
Nice.
it was hurting my ears at times and I've never felt the seats rumble so hard from like the bass and the explosions. You know, the person I saw it with, we both like looked at each other after like the first explosion. It was like, did you feel like was that as it was crazy. But then I also rewatched it on HBO Max just the other night. It just like sounded like a lot of fun because it was that fun. I really wanted to re-see it. What are some other spoilery moments you wanted to talk about?
Well, you know, I kind of want to talk about. I guess if I am going to complain about the movie, for me, yeah, like I said, it was a little too long, and I also there were parts where it felt like the movie was getting a little serious, like a little self-serious.
Yeah,
There was a whole plot about, you know, their whole mission was to basically blow up this building or destroy everything that was inside of this building in this country,
yeah,
and it took them a really long time to get there. And it felt like that could have happened faster. And then when they finally did, it was like tied in with this thing that U.S. government is actually the people who were responsible for the thing that's in this building that they're trying to blow up, and you're covering up their tracks, and it got kind of like I just didn't think that sort of serious topic fit with the tone of the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And I think they could have kept it a little more lighthearted and had it go a little quicker.
Hmm. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I think it does kind of clash with the vibe of the rest of the movie. But at the same time, for me, that was the part that felt like it worked the most to me. Like from the moment they get pretty much, yeah, when they arrive at that base to the credits rolling, I thought was the most solid part of the film. Like the whole third act to me was just like it was great the whole time. I don't really have any complaints. I really liked the like the John Cena kind of heel turn within this movie of bad guys, you know?
Yeah, I was
Um,
into that. I was into that, and I was into his final confrontation with Idris Elba.
yeah.
That was great. Actually, that was another thing is that what I was gonna say earlier was that I was a little disappointed that they brought him back because he died. Like at least we thought that he died, and then they
John
brought him back
Cena.
at the end. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
brought him back at like the post-credit sequences, like the Peacemaker's still alive and all that. And I was kind of thinking like, oh, it's cool that they killed him off because then he has one role and da 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 da. But
Yeah.
now there's gonna be a show. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm all in for John Cena, so I can't complain about that.
Right.
But
Yeah, they had to
I
find a
mean,
way.
I don't know, man. It's this thing where like I love the ending. I love the climax, and but what I loved about it was the giant starfish.
Yeah.
I loved this. Basically, the thing that was inside of that building that was supposed to blow up was a giant starfish from outer space that had telekinetic powers and um, was really sad.
Yeah.
It had been captured by the U.S. Army, the government,
Like the
and they were doing
astronauts.
like
Yeah.
yeah, astronauts, and they were like doing experiments on it, and telepathically it was like, oh, they've been torturing me for years. I just want to get out of here. And then it got out, and it's just like rumbling through the town, being like, this is my city, and it's just smashing stuff,
Yeah.
and um,
Even the
yeah, I
starfish kind of had like a heartbreaking like storyline.
That's
You're
what I'm
right.
saying is that
Yeah.
like no other movie would ever give a giant starfish any emotional resonance.
Yeah.
But this movie has the guts and the bravado to give this giant monster a sad nugget of truth,
It's
of
like
like perspective.
its final line, like literally, like I was like, oh my god, that's heartbreaking. It's just like
What was
they
its
they
final line? I don't
win,
remember.
obviously the heroes win, they don't
Sure.
all die, and they kill it, and with its like last breath, it can control people with these little starfish that it like attaches to people's faces, and one of the bodies stand up and look at Idris Elba, and it says, I was so happy just floating alone in space.
I
And I was
know,
like, oh my
right?
god.
Like just looking at the stars, I think he said too.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
just
just
liked
looking
looking
at
at
the
the.
stars.
Oh man, it's like humans ruin everything.
Yeah, it was.
Um, I just remembered that we haven't talked about the shark character.
Mhm.
What was his name? The
King Shark.
King Shark. That was
Yeah,
another fun character that I wanted to
Sylvester
just bring up
Stallone
because, yeah, Sylvester Stallone
voiced.
voiced him, and he just said basic things like hand,
Yeah,
and uh, there was a
friend.
really beautiful scene when they were in that building, and he was interacting with a bunch of fish in a tank, and he
Mm.
got so excited that they were being friendly with him. Because he also was like a sad, lonely creature.
Yeah,
And he just was like, friends! When he realized that these fish were friends with him. And unfortunately, then when the tank broke, they all attacked him. And it
yeah.
was very sad. He went back to being sad.
I think like that's part of what really makes this movie come together for me in the third act is I think it's like kind of already seeing a trend just in these two characters we've talked about. Everyone in this film are like lonely, sad people that have just had terrible lives.
Yeah.
And this mission almost becomes like just kind of this a way out of that life for them. They all kind of bond. They spend a lot of time in the movie actually building up the bond between all these characters, and something the other movie never did is they have like, they made sure to have like an emotional ground throughout the movie, which I think was like Ratcatcher 2. It's kind of the anchoring everybody into reality, is crazy as her character is as well, but I think they give her the most backstory, or at least the most context of like her mindset and stuff like that. And she's also the one that saves the day, and just the way they handled all of that, and like her and Idris Elba's relationship, like just worked so well for me. Like
Yeah,
I was just,
he kind of became a father figure to her
yeah,
when he didn't want to be a father. He said some pretty horrible things to his actual daughter in
yeah,
the beginning of the movie, but you could tell he actually did love her. He just was trying to protect her because he's a scumbag.
yeah,
But yeah, the her story was really great. I agree. She was the emotional anchor of the movie, despite all the rats that she hung around with.
yeah, and controlled rats. I guess it's a weird power, but it worked really well. And as cheesy as it might have been, I thought her ending, um, like that big climactic moment of the starfish fight, really worked for me. And I was like almost tearing up when it does the flashback with her and her dad, Taika Waititi, like in Paris or wherever they are. Like that was it was really sweet. I think James Gunn's just really good at um, putting in those really sweet, kind of cheesy, but um, like emotional scenes that really they do the work that needs to be done to make us really care about these characters. And yeah, along with her performance and Idris Elba and everybody, it really all worked very well for me. Um,
Yeah, I just
the
want to
ending.
reiterate what you just said about Taika Waititi. It's like because
Oh yeah,
that was another like thing where at first he shows up in like a flashback, but he doesn't have any lines. It's just
yeah.
like him and Ratcatcher 2 playing with rats.
And he's like doing
So
heroin
weird.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just doing heroin, and I was like, is he just not gonna have any lines in this movie? And then they brought him back, and I'm pretty sure his only line was that like little beautiful moment that can I have the quote up here.
Yeah.
So she says, "Why rats, Papa?" And he says, "Rats are the lowliest and most despised of all creatures, my love. But if they have a purpose, so do we all."
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment. That truly is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything has a purpose, everything has a meaning, everything's connected.
Yeah.
If you think about it that way.
Yeah. And rats save the day in this movie.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of wanted to see the starfish take over that whole town, but the whole city. But then, yeah,
Yeah.
all the women and children would have died too, and that was kind of a thread of the movie that kept coming
Yeah.
back. Is that as much as you care about the starfish, you don't necessarily need hundreds and thousands of women and children and
Dead.
innocent people dying.
Right. I will say, you know what? I just remembered one thing that I actually dislike quite a bit in this movie, and it happens a lot. There's just probably one of the bigger down
The
like
the
things
the weird transitions.
that no, the music. I mean, not the songs. The songs are great, and I think they carry a lot of like the scenes where the sound, like the actual composed soundtrack, I think is really lacking. In fact, I think it's the same like small composition throughout the whole movie, starting in the opening scene and every fight scene and every action scene. It's the same exact music, and it's pretty bland. It's just like a guitar and some drums, and it's not super interesting. And they use it constantly throughout the whole movie, and it was like it's something that normally wouldn't bother me, but it was so noticeable. I think maybe because they had so many cool songs like peppered in. When that music kicked in, it was like it reminded me of like Fast and Furious uses a lot of just like generic um like rock music in like action scenes that are just nothing. It's just like some composer probably threw it together really quick. It's nothing special, and it doesn't sound cool. It's just like it's something to kind of fill the background noise. And yeah, they used it a lot in this, and it was actually something that stood out and was bugging me throughout the movie. Which normally
Hmm.
it isn't. So in my head, that makes it much more worse than it probably was. But
Well, that's an interesting take though, because I always feel like a good score, like I I often don't hear the score. You know,
Yeah.
I just it's not something I like pay super close attention to. But I
Hmm.
do think it's like an invisible like muscle.
Yeah.
You know, it's the thing that like elevates or lowers. You know, and I often think that when people are complaining about pacing or boredom or and stuff like that, I think they're actually really complaining about
The score.
invisible things like the score
Yeah. The
and
editing and stuff.
maybe that's what I'm talking about when I'm like maybe if the score would have been better I wouldn't have been complaining about it being too long, although
Yeah.
I think there were scenes that could have been
Yeah.
like cut out completely, but I do think that a score could like really
Yeah.
um elevate a movie.
Everything plays it, has a role, and if something's exceptionally bad, I don't know that this one's exceptionally bad, but it just really stood out to me and was distracting and kind of pulled me out. And if your attention gets pulled away from the story and everything, it's gonna feel much more like it's dragging. And so,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So one last thing, I don't know if you have anything else. I don't mean to interrupt you or anything, but I don't mean to say one last thing before
Oh, I see. Yeah.
cutting. I just wanted to bring up that Cal Shea, friend of the show. He was asking me if I thought this was a reboot or a
Hmm.
sequel or what is this?
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to get your take on it. Um, Personally, I don't think it's anything.
Yeah.
I I think it's just like another like comic.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just another adventure.
I mean, in the world of comics, it's so easy to just say that. Like that's the cool thing about, like, especially what DC's doing, because they're a little more. They're not as stringent on like the structure and the timeline as MCU is. So it's like Joker obviously is its own thing, and so it's not a stretch to say this is completely its own thing. Also, in comics, that's super common. But for me, there's a line in there actually between Harley and Captain Boomerang that made me think that they wanted us to think that this was like what happened with them in the first movie happened to these characters. But this is just a new story, just a new thing that happened with them, and so I think it is a continuation of those characters. Like Birds of Prey happened, Suicide Squad happened, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect the story at all. It's just, so I would say it's a sequel. It's just not a direct. I think technically, from what I've read, it is supposed to take place in like the Snyderverse or whatever you want to call it.
DCEU.
Yeah, it's supposed to be kind of the last of those films before they start off with their big reboot. I think, which is going to be the Flash movie. So
The plat is Ezra Miller in the Flash movie? Well,
yeah,
we don't need to get into that, but I have no idea I have no idea what DC is doing. I'm basically like, oh, cool, DC movie.
I don't know that they
Let's watch
fully
it.
know what they're doing, but I know they want to do. It sounds like they're doing the Flashpoint movie for sure. Is like the next big DC movie, and
Well, what comes out first, Flash or the Batman?
the Batman, I think, and I think they
But
did.
that's definitely not
That's
DCU
also
because
separate.
that's
Yeah, from what I heard, they
yeah.
said that the Batman's going to be its own thing also. So I don't know if they really know what they're doing. I think like they probably want to make an MCU. Like it would make sense for them to have a storyline that they can tell between movies. But I think they're also open to not doing that. Like the
Sure.
Joker's getting two sequels. We know that already. So
Who?
yeah, Joaquin Phoenix got like $50 million for two sequels, I think.
What else did they have to say?
I don't know.
I mean, like
Maybe it's
I
gonna
mean,
tie in.
I just hope they go in weird directions. I was just listening to a podcast and they
Yeah.
were talking about how they should make a Joker musical where he takes over a Broadway show,
Yeah.
like Broadway stage, and he takes it over and he just does
And
a
it's
musical.
just the
I'd
musical. Like that's
yeah,
the
like
movie.
I'd be into like that sort of thing. But if they make another like Todd Phillips like sequel, direct sequel to that one where it's like the same kind of thing,
Mhm.
like I don't know, who
Yeah.
has time for that?
I'd hope that Joaquin Phoenix, with as selective as he is with movies, like wouldn't allow that to happen. I don't know how much control he has, but he got paid $50 million, so I assume he's got some sort of say in it. But or
Hard to
maybe
turn
it's
down.
yeah, exactly. So who knows? But
Cool.
yeah, well, that's Suicide Squad. I think we both really liked it. Um, I think it's a fun movie. Like you said, I could recommend it to pretty much anyone. I think my mom and sister watched it today. So it's, it's gory, but it's a fun, mostly lighthearted film. And it doesn't, I don't think it pushes any boundaries too hard. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I can't recommend it for everyone. A few weeks back on the pod when me and Brandon talked about Zola, which is one of my favorite movies of the year, I said
yeah.
like everyone should watch it, even if you don't normally watch movies like this. And
Yeah.
my parents went and watched it, and they were like, "Not for us. We don't like movies about strippers."
Yeah.
So I'm not going to recommend this one, a movie that's ultra violent with a talking shark.
Yeah.
So
Oh, you know what? Now that, just because I set it up, I feel like we got to talk about it. There's one scene, which is Harley kind of has her own side quest throughout most of this movie, and
yes,
there's a big breakout scene, which is really cool, well choreographed, like action scene of her kind of like gleefully breaking out of this place she was being held captive. And what I was talking about with the rated R thing and maybe not showing too much blood, I don't know how the rules work with that. I know like Kill Bill had to go black and white to get around the NC-17 rating, and I feel like in that scene they, I don't know if you remember, but it kind of turns into this flowery, like cartoonish thing where there's flowers exploding out of every person she shoots and stuff like that. And in my head when I was watching it, that's what I felt like they were doing, is kind of getting
yeah,
away
I
of
remember
being
that.
too much.
I thought that was a style choice, honestly,
And
because
yeah,
it
it
was
could have been.
Harley and it was Harley Quinn, and I don't know. I got the sense that like that's how she
That's
sees the
what she
world
sees.
sometimes,
Yeah.
especially when she's killing people. And then there was also that other weird like dreamlike element where she picked up the what do you call it, the javelin,
Mm-hmm.
and it just kind of appeared. I remember she was walking down the hall and
Oh
she
yeah,
was just
she's
like,
like, oh, there it
"Oh,
is.
there's that travel," and she just like picked up and she had it, and then she started swinging it around, and
Yeah.
I don't know, just very much like there was a lot of that scene that was very dreamlike, and
Yeah.
I think it was more style choice, but you could be right. I mean, that definitely happened with Kill Bill. They had to make that black and the crazy '88 fight in black and white,
Yeah.
just too much blood splatter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who knows? That was just something that I thought about when I was watching it. I was like, wonder if that's
Yeah.
why they did that. But yeah, it totally works. Also, is like she's crazy. Like when she kills people, she sees butterflies and like flowers coming out instead of blood. So it's, but all right.
Yeah.
Well, either way,
Definitely
that's
recommend for if this is your kind of thing. I mean, we
yeah,
talked about for 40 minutes. Like, yeah, if this is your kind of thing, like if you like comic book movies, if you like violence, definitely check it out. Definitely don't miss.
it's a fun movie. Um,
Yeah.
so that's James Gunn's Suicide Squad. It's in theaters right now. It's also available on HBO Max. Um, yeah. Next week, Nick is going to be reviewing the movie Coda. I don't. Do you know who's
Yeah.
reviewing it with you yet?
I don't. I asked you guys and no one responded, and then I asked again and no one responded. So maybe I'll just do it by
I
myself.
think I saw
Or
Brandon like your question, so
oh, did he?
maybe it's a Brandon.
Cool,
But
cool. That'd be
yeah,
awesome.
you guys don't have
Yeah,
many together, so
we did Zola together, but
yeah.
yeah, I think Zola and this are the types of movies that Brandon like where our Venn diagrams cross.
Oh, okay.
This movie won Sundance this year,
Oh,
and then
okay.
Apple TV picked it up, and so it's going to be on Apple TV, Apple TV Plus, I guess, and then also in some select theaters. But I don't think it's going to be at AMC's. I think it's going to be like in Seattle. It's playing at the Crest.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but I am very excited about this movie. I think it's going to be great.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's it. Um, thanks for talking with me tonight.
Hell yeah.
Hope you have a good night. And just for everybody, like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. You can also follow us on the podcast on Spotify or wherever you get podcasts. So, all right. Have a good night. Bye.
Peace out.